Hey folks, Mr. Dell here. We are looking at solving equations, so linear equations with a single variable, going through this process and those steps. So this is something I'm taking from CPM's Course 2, Section 6.2.3, and specifically number 6-81. So it says solve each equation below 4x. Check your final answer. Remember, when we're solving equations, really I'm looking for, just to give you the context of what I'm actually doing here, I want to know what number, right? X is representing a number in this case. What number does X represent? So 4, so what does this say? 4 times some number equals 6 times that same number minus 14. So I could sit and guess. I could say, well, maybe it's 1. What if X was 1, right? If X was 1, it'd be 4 times 1 is 4. And over here, it'd be 6 times 1 is 6. 6 minus 14 is negative 8. So does 4 equal negative 8? No. So X does not equal 1, right? So we could sit and guess what X is, or I can use the steps for solving an equation. So let me write those steps so to remind you. There's 3 steps. One is to simplify. That's the first step. And when I mean simplify, there's a couple things. There's distribute, combine like terms, right? The second one is to isolate the variable term. Right. That means get all my x's on one side and all my constants on the other, right? Isolate the variable term. Right here, I've got 2 variable terms, 4x and 6x. I want it only on one side. So that's what I mean by it, isolate variable term. And then the third is to divide by the coefficient. Because once you have the variable term isolated, then you've got to get it to be its 1x, not multiple x's or whatever the variable is. So those are the simplified versions of those steps. I could get more details in there, but listen again. So simplify is distribute or combine like terms. So first, let's start there. On either side, and I tend to put a little equation wall there, so I realize that this is where my equal sign goes, and everything on one side happens on the other. So it needs to stay equal. So simplify. Simplify means distribute. No distribute because there's no parentheses. Combine like terms. Nope. 4x is all by itself. It's good to know. And then 6x and 14, that's a variable term. That's a constant. They can't be combined. So nothing to do in step 1. Step 2, isolate variable term. This is where now we want variables only on one side and nothing else with it. So if I look and I see this, I have 4x on this side, 6x on this side. So I want to get all my variables over here and keep my numbers on this side. That's one of the processes. So I'm going to get rid of this 6x, and to get rid of it, you need to make a 0 pair, right? To make it a 0 pair, in this case, would be to subtract 6x. So that means that 6x minus 6x becomes a 0, and it's gone. But to do it legally, what you do to one side, you do to the other. So I'm going to subtract 6x from this side. So 4x minus 6x, a positive 4x and negative 6x is negative 2x. So I have negative 2x is equal to, and don't forget that sign in front of the 14 is a negative 14. Okay, so I've isolated. Now I've got my variable term on one side, my constant on the other side. So I'm done with step 2. Step 3, divide by the coefficient. So that means make a giant 1 in front of that x, right? The coefficient's negative 2, so I'm going to divide by negative 2. That way this whole thing becomes a big 1 and gives me just 1x, what I want. So what you do to one side, you always do to the other side. And so negative 14 divided by negative 2 gives me positive 7. So what I just discovered is I think, and I'm going to go and check it, I think x equals 7. So I think when I put x back into that, I think that if I take and multiply 4 times 7, it's going to be the same thing as 6 times 7 minus 14, right? That's what I want to check. So 4 times 7 is 28. 6 times 7 is 42. And then 42 minus 14, does that equal 28? Yes, it does. So it does. You have the same thing on both sides. It checks out. So that is the answer. All right, so that's that process using these steps. Excuse me. So over here, let's do this one. So again, first step, simplify. And remember, once I'm looking for what does that x equal? 3 times what plus 5 is 50. You may even be able to guess it. 3 times some number plus 5 is 50. But if you're having trouble guessing what that number is, then go through these steps. So first step, simplify. Nothing to simplify because this is already just as simplified as possible. 3x plus 5. 50, just 50 by itself. So done with that, isolate variable term. That means get my variable term by itself. What I want is I want that 3x to be alone. So I got to eliminate the 5 to make a zero pair here. So you're going to positive 5, negative 5, zeros out. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So now I have 50 and negative 5 give me 45. So I have 3x equals 45. Last step, divide by the coefficient. So the coefficient is 3. I'm dividing by 3 because I want that to become a 1, right? So divide by 3, both sides. So x equals 15. 45 divided by 3 is 15. So I think x is 15. So we can check it. Does 3 times 15 plus 5, does it equal 50 is the question. 3 times 15 is 45. 45 plus 50, 45 plus 5 does equal 50. It checks out. So then, therefore, that is the answer. Put a box around it. I'm good to go. All right, so that's how this process of solving and checking your solutions.